Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. GenCon just wrapped up over the weekend. There were many Dragon Ball events at GenCon, many different tournaments, and you would think it's the Monday after a big tournament. You would think that we would do a meta breakdown here on the channel. There's actually a reason why we're not doing a meta breakdown for GenCon. We're actually talking about what we learned from GenCon Online in today's video. I will explain why we're not doing a meta breakdown for this tournament or this series of tournaments. Just bear with me as we go through the video. There's some good, some bad to talk about as we go through this. Guys, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss the video. If you want to help the channel out, there are many links down in the description below. We have the Patreon, the Gemmy app if you guys want to get your cross-world competitive articles or your one-on-one coaching with yours truly. We have deck protection down there if you need any sleeves, binders, deck boxes, and of course, if you need any Dragon Ball Super cards, definitely use my link in the description to TCG Player. That being said, let's get started. So, why are tournaments important? Now, there's a very fundamental, or a few fundamental reasons why these big tournaments are actually important, and I don't feel like people talk about this enough, so I feel like I can use this time here to explain why that is. And if you're a more casual player, you might watch my videos and you might never even care about the meta breakdowns, you might not care about the big tournament coverage, but tournaments are important no matter what kind of player you are in this game, and I'm going to explain why. So from the game designer perspective, which for Dragon Ball Super, that's Bandai. Why are tournaments important for Bandai? Well, one, it's a huge source of advertising for your game in a few ways. So let's say back in the day when ARG used to host Dragon Ball tournaments, right? You would have ARG hosting Yu-Gi-Oh, Dragon Ball, Card Fight Vanguard, all that different stuff in one big room, right? So you have a lot of people there that, one, never heard of Dragon Ball Super, and two, they're being exposed to it in that situation, in that area, right? The next thing is, you know, you're running these big tournaments, and the point is for players to have a good time, for players to have a really enjoyable experience. And when that happens, you have players talking about it. Oh, I was in Chicago, I was in Texas for this Dragon Ball tournament. It was the best time of my life. It was so fun seeing all my friends, this and that. That's generally what you hear about all these Dragon Ball tournaments. And from my experience, that's 110% true. So basically the point is, for the game designer, these major tournaments are a big source of advertising for the tournaments. You really want to get the game out there by giving the players an enjoyable experience. And that matters for the casual players as well, because that advertising, that exposure, keeps the game going. You know, there's a lot of different factors to keeping the game alive. That's buying product, that's advertising for these tournaments, advertising through, you know, ads, commercials, just any way to get revenue for the game up, because, you know, at the end of the day, it is a business. If the game doesn't thrive, the game doesn't survive, right? So those are the main reasons why running tournaments, especially the big tournaments, are important to game designers. And there's a whole other perspective to why running these tournaments are important for tournament organizers. Tournament organizers oftentimes work with Bandai. You know, they budget out the event halls, they budget out the prizing, they budget out all these different things. And at the end of the day, the TO obviously, you know, doesn't want to lose a ton of money. They do want to make some money back in their investment. A lot of times they actually will lose money on the event halls, on the prizing, on different things like that, but they'll try to make money back from like vending cards. So oftentimes if you've gone to these bigger tournaments, or even at a local, you know, sometimes you're local at the front desk there, they will sell, you know, sell singles to you. And a lot of times at these bigger tournaments, that's how TOs are going to make the majority of their money back, or at least make the investment in buying collections from players and then, you know, selling it later, right? So those are the two important reasons why tournaments are important to the different people that host tournaments. One, the game designers, and two, the TOs. Now, obviously, GenCon Online was a very different experience, you know, hence the term online. You're pretty much taking a lot of cost away from tournament organizers. Like, whoever's hosting these online tournaments, it could be PPG, it could be core TCG, it could be Top Cut events. They are taking a big break in the amount of funds it takes to throw these tournaments. You know, it's obviously a lot cheaper to host tournaments online rather than hosting an event hall and all that good stuff. Yeah, they're losing some of the money on like vending cards, but the amount of money they're saving from not having to do these tournaments is big. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form we should convert it into like all online tournaments. I'm just saying it's a pretty good situation for the condition of the world, right? With coronavirus and all that stuff going on. That is important. So there are a lot of good takeaways from GenCon Online, like I kind of just talked about. But the additional good things here, one of them being Bandai's willingness to move online for a very long time. Some people have been talking about this since the inception of the game, getting an online client for Dragon Ball Super. It would be a pretty important move. I used to be a lot more against it because honestly, it would break my heart to see, you know, the paper game you know, run into issues and not be as lively as the online game. Now that could just be an inevitable thing. You know, obviously if the game is playable online, if there is a client like, you know, comparable to Magic Arena, that would make it accessible to a lot of players, especially if it's for the most part free to play. You know, I know there's some things in there you can pay for, like packs and certain cards, whatever, and that would probably be similar for the Dragon Ball Super version of that, but it would be very, very cool. It would actually probably be a step in the right direction in terms of making this game even bigger, which at the end of the day, that's my goal. I know a lot of figureheads in the community have that same goal, and I think it's really cool that Bandai is actually embracing Untap and embracing Octagon. You know, I just come from Yu-Gi-Oh, where they actually had to put cease and desist orders on a program called Dueling Book, which is basically a fan-made program where you could play Yu-Gi-Oh, and Konami actually put a cease and desist on them, told them they had to stop, you know, promoting their website. They had to stop running their website, and that is really heartbreaking to see. You know, people sometimes can only play online. Like, I have friends in California that I can't play Dragon Ball with unless I can play through Untap or Octagon. So the fact that Bandai is willing to work with these online programs, yeah, they still make you own the IRL cards, and honestly, that makes sense because of kind of what I talked about before. You have to own the cards, because if the game's not making sales, the game doesn't survive. So I'm actually perfectly all well and good with that. I know some people think it's dumb that you're playing in an online tournament, but again, it's not an official Bandai client, and I think the fact that they're giving us that wiggle room to play online but making us own the cards, I honestly think that's pretty acceptable. Now, that is a whole different conversation from card prices, which we're actually going to talk about in this video. Stay tuned for that. So the next good thing from GenCon Online, players have a place to play. That is really important. You know, the game has been, or no, I shouldn't say it has been. The game was a little bit stagnant at the start of the pandemic because we were in a relatively stale format and there wasn't any new stuff coming out. And obviously, people had just been told you can't go to your locals, you can't play at your locals because it's not safe, right? So now that players have a place to play, especially given that Set 10 and Anniversary Box coming out very soon, the fact that players have a place to play with those new cards, I think is very important for the maintenance and the growth and the health of the game. So I like that a lot. I also have another good point here that players can get the new promos. Obviously, we have the Championship Pack promos and the new Event Pack promos with some pretty good reprints in them. But yeah, so this is basically a way where players can get those promos. But you see I have an asterisk there next to promos, and there's a reason for that. It's not all good, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So why is there no meta breakdown? This might have been what some of you guys have been waiting for, especially if you guys, you know, are big fans of the meta breakdowns I do here on the channel. That's because Gen Con was full of low integrity tournaments. Now, what do I mean by that? The reason why there were so many low integrity tournaments is because there were a ton of players that entered the Gen Con events and dropped after 2 rounds. Why was that? Well, after 2 rounds, you were guaranteed your entry prizing, and that included X amount of packs of the new champ packs and X amount of packs of the event packs. That really lowers the integrity of a format and of a tournament. So there really isn't a lot of good data to pull from this. I actually posted on the main Facebook group. I asked, you know, who's keeping track of what's going on at Gen Con this weekend, and a lot of common replies. You know, there's people just dropping after 2 rounds. There's not a lot of good data to pull from that. And again, this might not matter as a casual player, and it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, because a lot of people aren't taking the online tournaments and they're not giving them the same standards as some of the IRL premier events, and that's perfectly okay. I do actually agree with that to a point, but I think Virginia Beach, I think PPG Online, I think Core TCG Online, and Top Cut Online, the ones that I've covered over the past 2 weeks, those are pretty high integrity tournaments. I mean, there was something on the line there. People weren't just entering and dropping just for promos. They were playing out the tournaments. And we saw some pretty cool results in the top cuts of those events. Gen Con, though, has been very different, and that has a lot to do with the promo distribution. Now, for a long time in the game, people have talked about the promo distribution being a problem. For the longest time, I really didn't see it as a problem, but this time around, I do see that it's a little bit more of a problem, and I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to offer some potential solutions. I really don't want to just like complain about this and not offer potential solutions, and I don't think it's like the biggest problem in the world, but let's just talk about it. So we have these new cards, especially Great Ape Sand Instinct Son Goku, the reprint, and Metacooler Terrifying Horde. These are like the faces of each of their respective packs, and people are selling Metacoolers on Facebook for roughly like $200 a copy right now. It's kind of nuts, actually. And I actually checked the Sand Instinct reprint on TCG Player. The market price there is $200 as well. So you have a combination of this. You have a combination of players just entering and dropping just to get the promos, and then, you know, they're being sold at very, very high prices. Now, here's what I'll say about the high prices. I really do believe that the market kind of fluctuates itself, and especially when you put these things on the auction group being the most popular group for buying and selling in Dragon Ball Super. If players bid those crazy high numbers, the cards are probably worth those crazy high numbers while the supply is low. That's a really important thing. In the first few weeks these promos are out, the supply is very low and the demand is very high, because oftentimes these promos are very, very good. Players want them. They kind of lack a little bit in the patience department, and you'll see crazy high bids. You know, I saw bids go from 0 to 20 bucks to 100 bucks like right after 20 bucks, and that's honestly pretty insane to see. And the sad thing about this is we saw the same thing at Vegas, actually, the Vegas Bandai regional, the last event really before the pandemic struck. We saw this same thing because the event was at a con, and you could get free entry to the tournament as long as you had a con pass. So actually the situation there was a lot worse. People were signing up their friends who had con passes, just getting the entry prizing, because at that time those promos were brand new and worth a lot of money. So people were getting those promos and their friends were getting them who don't even play Dragon Ball, didn't even have a deck to enter. You got your entry promos just upon signing up, and those players, or those people rather, just left, went to the con, didn't pay a second mind to Dragon Ball, and that was actually a pretty low integrity tournament in and of itself. Now they did fix that a little bit here. You had to play at least 2 rounds in order to get the promos. That definitely worked out. I think doing this type of thing in the future at IRL events is definitely one possible solution to this problem. But this is the reality of the situation. The promos are high priced on release and they will drop. That's just the reality of it. I think after this weekend there's going to be something like 3,000 of these promo packs, or possibly more, going out to Dragon Ball Super players. That means there's going to be a lot of supply in the market. So I do expect the prices of these promos to drop, but it is kind of unfortunate the first week or two these things are out, they're really incredibly high priced. Now, I do have some potential solutions I want to talk about here. The first one being, you could eliminate promos. Now, in the beginning of this video, I talked about how Yu-Gi-Oh! Completely hates online platforms that aren't their own. And Dragon Ball's taking a different approach to that, which I really, really like. But one thing Yu-Gi-Oh! Does that I do kind of like, they don't do promo cards. They do one type of exclusive card that's a prize card. Basically, if you top 4 one of their major events, you get a prize card. And it's a really strong card. Oftentimes, it's very, very playable, but it's not needed for any deck to be like tier 1 or high tier, right? That is a pretty good way of doing things in terms of keeping prices fair for the community in that sense, because, you know, if you want to play green, you need the $200 Metacooler promos. That's really, really unfortunate. But again, the price of Metacooler will drop, I am certain of that, but it is unfortunate, you know, in the first 2 weeks to the first month of it being out, that is pretty problematic. So you could eliminate promos altogether, you know, not do tournament pack promos, not do, you know, champ pack promos, things like that. That is a possibility. You could also take these promos and distribute them primarily at locals, or only at locals. That could be a possible thing as well, because if you're going to do it at locals, the supply just has to be driven up so that they can get to all different locals. That just has to be done. So the supply would be driven up. That would make the demand go down a little bit. That would make the prices go down a little bit. And I think that'd be a pretty good trade-off. Now, what I will say is event packs oftentimes do get widely distributed at locals, and we are starting to return to locals. So that is a pretty good thing in terms of the Saiyan Instincts reprint. I really do predict Saiyan Instincts to drop in price pretty hard, at least after, you know, a lot of event packs go into circulation. And that was definitely Bandai's intent with the reprint, which I have to give them props for that. You know, there's definitely some good things Bandai's done with these online tournaments and with reprints. You know, obviously Draftbox 4 was a mistake. We talked about that a ton of times. We kind of have to just get over it at this point. They've made the necessary reprints. They reprinted Raiders Warcry. They reprinted UI Goku in the anniversary box coming out in a few weeks. And they reprinted Saiyan Instincts, which is already out. Now we kind of have to just wait for the price of that card to fall. The other potential solution is you can increase the amount of promos given for entry to these major events. Again, that would drive up supply and lower demand, which would pretty much, you know, level out the price, which would be very, very nice. So I just wanted to offer some possible solution, guys, and this is the part where I really want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you guys think about this whole situation? What do you guys think about these possible solutions? Do you have any other solutions you might recommend, you might suggest? I definitely want to know in the comments below what you guys think. Sorry, no meta breakdown for this week. There just wasn't really a lot of reliable data to pull from. Instead, I wanted to take this time and talk about this issue. But guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time.